I'm here wearing three hats. I am here representing anti-Zionist activists from the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. And I am also here representing the Utility Workers Union of America, which represents workers in gas, electricity, and water. And I am also here as a member of the labor section of the International Jewish Anti-Zionist Network. First, as anti-Zionist activists, women and men of many religions and of none, in and around the labor movement in Canada, the United States, and the UK, we are delighted to be represented here in Cairo at this historic moment. Like everyone who wants a better world for workers and our families, we acknowledge that when the people of Egypt, Sha'ab al-Masari, in their millions revolt against injustice, it is a defining moment for workers around the world. We send thankful greetings to the people of North Africa and Southwest Asia who have launched a new wave of international revolutionary activity which has had an immediate impact as far afield, at least, as Madison, Wisconsin, and Olympia, Washington in the United States. The occupation of the Wisconsin State House has joined the immigrant rights movement and others in giving new life and energy to working class movements, union and non-union, in the United States. It was followed in Arizona by students using the same tools as their counterparts here in Egypt, occupying the school board and chaining themselves in, while in Olympia, Washington, students and unions occupied the state capitol, also protesting budget cuts. In Wisconsin, directly influenced by Tahrir Square, students, young people, seniors, unionists, Iraqi veterans against the war, and mothers with children occupied a U.S. State House for the first time in living memory and held it for weeks, redecorating the building inside and out with picket signs, banners, slogans, and other symbols of resistance in defiance of the state governor. We are also mindful of the fact that one immediate consequence of the revolution in Egypt has been the partial opening of the Rafah crossing, beginning to break the brutal and murderous U.S.-Israeli Mubarak blockade of Gaza. On the U.S. side of the Atlantic, we have been and must continue to mobilize to undermine the Zionist agenda by advocating and acting for boycott, divestment, and sanctions. It is less than a year since one of our greatest victories, the refusal of the Longshoremen's Union to cross a community picket line in Oakland, preventing the unloading of an Israeli ship for the first time in U.S. history. A similar campaign exists in the United Kingdom, where many trade unions, including the influential TUC, Trade Union Congress, have voted for boycott action. And just this week, the University and College Union voted to dissociate itself from the working definition of anti-Semitism, thereby refusing the equation anti-Zionism equals anti-Semitism. The Palestinians, through their refusal to accept occupation, apartheid, and ethnic cleansing, have been a continuous thorn in the side of Zionism and its supporters, including all the corrupt Arab governments which are now being confronted by their whole populations. In addition, the wave of strikes in Egypt has created new independent trade unions, some of which we have just heard about, now emerging from the rank and file, unlike the old unions which have been extensions of corporate government establishment. This working class activity has deepened and broadened the rebellion. By their actions, workers and their families have made the movement of the working class in its diversity, with the Egyptian women workers, for example, in Mahala, showing the way, so visible that it becomes increasingly less possible for union leaders in the United States and elsewhere to pretend, by aligning themselves with the corrupt racism of the Israeli Histadrut, that Arab workers do not exist and are not deserving of the active solidarity of trade unions in every country. We are here in gratitude, solidarity, and to learn. I also want to bring greetings from my national president of the Utility Workers Union, who has stated publicly that as far as he is concerned, what we need in the United States is more Tahrir squares all over the country. And in addition, he sent me and others to Wisconsin to take part in the takeover of the State House, which was really an amazing experience. Not as deep as what happened in Tahrir Square, but it gave some idea of what can happen in the United States when you take into account that there is really a working class in its breadth and all the different pieces that were put together. At one point, we heard this morning from a doctor, and it struck me that one of the things that happened in Wisconsin was out of nowhere. Suddenly we saw a demonstration of people in white coats, and they had a banner which said, "Future Doctors of Wisconsin." And they were chanting, "Do not, do not, do not resuscitate this bill," by which they meant the bill that the governor was pushing to drastically cut welfare benefits of all varieties, including health care, and to destroy public unions in the state of Wisconsin. It is important to note and important to remember that not only were the cuts in Wisconsin and other parts of the United States aimed at welfare and health care benefits, of which the main beneficiaries are women and children, but when you destroy public unions in the United States, it is women's unions and people of color's unions that you are destroying. And I mention people of color here, and I should point out that you have to look at the working class in the United States and the movements, the social movements that it encompasses, as being much greater than just the trade unions. For instance, there is a huge immigration movement in the United States, led by the fact that the largest minority, nearly 1/6 of the country, are now Latino workers and their families. And you have to see what the bourgeoisie and corporate America is attempting to do to the working class in the United States. If you take the city of Detroit, there are no longer any supermarkets in Detroit. There is nowhere for you to buy good food in the city of Detroit, which used to be the 7th largest city in the United States. For us, one group after another came in to the State House, and we had 250,000 people on one demonstration standing outside in the cold. And when I say cold, I mean -5 and -10 degrees centigrade. Serious cold, because Wisconsin gets seriously cold, right? For hours demonstrating and then parading into the State House and taking the State House as their own and holding on to it as they held on to Tahrir Square. And I would point out one thing, which is one of the biggest things was reading a message from Tahrir Square, from a labor activist who was in Tahrir Square, to the workers in Wisconsin. That was a big deal, and there was a big poster of a teenager, an Egyptian teenager, saying, "Egypt supports Wisconsin." And we further had, kind of on the side, the Egyptians began a process of sending food into the State House for those of us who were occupying. The kind of absurdity that had to be done, we were really delighted, and it got to a point, because of your lead, that more than 50 countries bought pizza for the people who were sitting in Wisconsin, and from every single state in the nation of the United States. What also took place in there, which is really important, there was the discussion of democracy. And these people who you would not have expected for, because of the discussion that was going on, the biggest slogan inside the state capitol was, "What does democracy look like?" This is what democracy looks like. And people repeated it again and again in the house that supposedly was built for democracy. We took over their house and we told them what democracy looked like. And the people outside, the 250,000 people outside, they told them what democracy looked like. And we learned it, at least in part, from you. And I just want to add one other thing. I am from the International Jewish Anti-Zionist Network, and we intend to make sure that we reclaim our heritage as Jews, that we were always supporters of movements for social change, and that the whole reason Zionism was created was to break the hold, or not the hold on most Jews of the labor movement for social change. And they have put something in there called the Histadrut, which they pretend is a union, but is the most racist, corrupt thing that we have ever seen in the union movement, and we intend to drive it out of the union movement. Thank you.